So why is a guy from the RRA standing up in front of you today? Partly as a favour to Professor Zitto, the head of civil engineering across there, that can't be here today, but because I said the mining industry pretty well, you know, they had their head around autonomous vehicles with trucks and that, and I've got a son who's a project manager for Sage Engineering. He's just come back from mines in Finland, and so I knew you guys were across it, but he said the complexity of what's about to what happens when you take it off the mine site is probably not what they're used to or fully understand. So just for the vernacular, is driverless cars, self-driving cars, or autonomous cars, whatever you want to call, essentially they are a combination of a couple of technologies. Autonomous cars are where all the systems are on board, they can navigate, make decisions about their environment without external communication. Connected cars are cars that are connected to the internet, to the other vehicles, to other users, and the optimum is a combination of both. So the vehicles that have got a lot of autonomy but can also talk to other vehicles, in particular to identify what risk other vehicles pose to them for collisions, etc. Some of the terms we use is vehicle to vehicle, V to V, vehicle to infrastructure, V to I, and V to X, and this is V to X is the hard bit, which is to everything else, the pedestrians and everything. Examples of V to I. This has been around for probably 15 years. It's the old e-call type devices. They're triggered by an airbag deployment, brings in basic communications into the car, send off emergency services, etc. That's pretty well mature. What we're starting to see now is the potential for V to I to be involved with things like what's being called green wave technology. Essentially what happens is when the car's going along sending out data about direction and speed, the infrastructure's picking up, knowing that asset's moving at this direction, that speed. It monitors a whole lot of them. It can send information back into the car, which today could be in the form of a visual to the driver saying if you're travelling down Green Hill Road at 58 kilometres an hour, if you slow to 54, you get the next green light. These sorts of technologies are relatively mature. Or you're travelling at 54, if you speed up to 56, you'll get the next green light. And the idea of these technologies, you start to bunch the cars, give them information so that they actually go through intersections as a cohort. And it's only one small step to turn this data to talk to the cruise control, so the person doesn't even do anything, it just slows your car and speeds your car up. So that you can be pulsed through intersections to make use of the infrastructure, the existing infrastructure that's there. A lot of people say, as the presentation said, when will it get here? Everything's started in the last couple of years. It really started, 20 years ago. If you take the driving task and broke it up into, just for the metrics, say 20 tasks. One of the tasks is keeping the car in a straight line. Another task is keeping it at a constant speed. Those things we didn't want to do, we asked the car to do. Cruise control is probably the most classic example. More recently, reverse parking, we don't like that function. The car can have that. So this is just a continuum, and progressively we'll give every task of the car that we want to do, don't want to do, to the car to do. And that's the progress of autonomy. In the industry, it's really divided up into 4 different levels. Level 3 being where we're approaching and the technologies that are required. So most of the technology now, most of the vehicles, if you look at the Googles and that of the world, are relying on 3 sensor systems. They're just looking at the traditional radar for depth and some identification of shape. You've got more accurate LiDAR. The Google cars you see going around with the spinning discs on top, it's LiDAR. It's a laser-based radar system. It effectively gives you much more definition and better field of vision than traditional radar, and helps you identify the shapes more accurately. Is it a child? Is it a dog? Is it a cyclist? And these are complemented with a camera system on top. often a bifocal camera, so you can get depth of range. And the reason you have cameras is because neither LiDAR or traditional radar can pick up colours. It won't know whether the traffic light's red or green. And these three systems make informed decisions about what they think they're seeing. That is, the radar will say, look, I see this object 70 metres away. LiDAR will say, I see this object 70 metres away, and to me it looks like a cyclist. And the camera will say, the depth of field is saying it's about 70 metres away, and it looks like a cyclist to me. So it has these algorithms to make the best decision that it can about what it's seeing. That's for the on-board stuff. The fully autonomous things like valet parking, where you literally will hop out the car and it will park itself. The new 7 Series BMW that came out this year does that. The problem is the law doesn't allow it, and most of the inhibiting things are going to be the legislation that frees up the environment to do that, and the other part of it is for them getting product liability to allow them to do it. The problem in the interim is how we deal with dumb and smart cars dealing with each other. There's some of these technologies may be able to be retrofitted just in the form of beacons, so that everybody knows whether that you're a dumb car and you're travelling in this direction. So you're likely to do dumb stuff. There'll be precincts that will and won't allow them. I'll talk about that in the next slide. So where are we in the scheme of things? We're kind of in this phase 3 from an engineering point of view. So there's a lot of restrictions on that, because at the end of the day, the roads are public spaces. The government have a responsibility for overall protection of people, and they will only allow these things to go out very, very slowly. The way it's likely to happen is that you'll end up with autonomous nodes, and there'll be the connectors between them. So these nodes could be as small as a retirement village. Once you go in there, only smart cars are allowed inside of here. Or it could be like a Mawson's Lakes. If you're building another Mawson's Lakes, you might say this modern suburb will have a lot of features, but one of them is you won't be able to come in here with a dumb car. They'll either have to be parked at a compound, or you won't be able to come in. So what that means is, if you live in that area, you will be able to drive in there and go to the shops, and your car can go home and park itself, or park itself somewhere, come back and pick you up when you've got your groceries and do that. Or you might go in there and the development, as is happening and it's been planned in Florida, some of these will just have the Google type cars that will only operate in this precinct, so you won't have a car inside of them. Once you come out, you go through corridors that have got intelligent transport interaction systems on between them. And this is more likely to start in Europe than here, because of the nature of their road networks. This year is the US lawmakers have put out an intention to rule, and they're going to mandate connectivity of all cars in the US in 2017-18. That is, all cars sold will have to be capable of talking to the internet, and the reason for that in the first instance will be for safety, that when it'll notify of accidents, etc. But eventually it'll roll out into smart tolling of roads and a whole lot of other features. Everybody talks about the hacking and terrorism. It's a real problem. Most of the technology that's been developed for autonomous vehicles has actually come out of the US military. That's where it really started 20 years ago. They've got assets that they want to deploy into places that they don't want to put military staff, and they started what was called the DARPA challenge over a decade ago, which was literally, you have to take a vehicle from here to there, a mile across undulating land with it making all its own decisions. That DARPA challenge was the thing that spurred the first team that won it. Chris Urmson went on to become the chief engineer and main developer of the Google car. A lot of them came out of Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, and Carnegie Mellon for autonomous vehicle technology is probably where all of the brightest stars in each of the companies have all come from. And we happen to have a South Australian connection here because Carnegie Mellon have a campus in Victoria Square. And I know that's through that connection they've been working with state government to exploit that. We've had some practical attempts at taking over vehicles, and a Tesla was hacked by some white hat hackers last month as well. In this instance, they were able to, there was a bit of pre-work, but they had to get some ID and access to the vehicle without the owner knowing it, but effectively what they did is they demonstrated that they could take over the steering, brakes and accelerator and put this into a ditch without the driver being able to stop it. So it's a real risk that once you connect to once anything's connected, there's an opportunity for hacking. One of the bigger issues for people is about the privacy. Now there's this exchange of data, who owns the data and who knows about it. They're predicting, just got away from it because I thought this might stop it. Anyway. They're predicting that at around level 4, the cars and infrastructure will be exchanging data at about a mega minute. So there's a lot of data going to be passed between them. So you have to have infrastructure that can deal with just processing that amount of data. And the intellectual property in these vehicles is becoming very important to the manufacturers. So they are really starting to make it so that almost nobody but themselves can get access to the data that's on their car, including the data of faults and how vehicles operate. The hard part about it, and this is a practical example, the guys at, I'll think of the company's name in a minute, the software developers for the auto industry, the American equivalent of Bosch, they have to program some hard rules into cars for them to operate. One of the rules is, one of the rules is you never cross a double yellow line. This car had broken down, so unless you start to teach them to brake, then this autonomous vehicle is going to stay there until it runs out of petrol. So, and another funny example was they were in Texas, and they drove up behind a semi transporting a portable house, and it started binging and pulled over because they're designed so if they don't understand what they're seeing, they pull over to the side because the algorithm had always told them that houses stay still. They hadn't worked out that, are we moving or is the house moving, but the trees are moving and it's sort of a little bit confused. And ethicists are in the debate as well about decisions. If you know that the driver can survive an accident to the back of his car but won't brake quick enough to not hit the child, does it run the car into the back of the van or run over the child? So, and there's a series of other, ethical issues of, if it can't brake enough, but it can swerve, and there's two cyclists, one wearing a helmet and one without it, you pick the one without it. Or the one with it, sorry, because they're more likely to survive. So it's just a whole minefield of ethical issues, because those ethical issues will eventually translate into, when something does go wrong, about the engineers who made the software having made the decision, not the person in the car at the time. Public acceptance, we survey the members, and there's still a fair bit of resistance to this. Healthy scepticism is probably the way this. So we are working on programs that will slowly expose them to these sorts of technologies. As I said, you guys putting all over the autonomous trucks and open cut mines, but I saw just this month Volvo have got their fully autonomous vehicles now being tested in mines there that underground. So it's moving along at a clip. So how are we preparing for this technology? We're talking today about South Australian involvement in this industry, and the vehicles that are going to, the technology that the vehicles are using to talk to each other is Wi-Fi technology. Wi-Fi was originally commercialised as a stationary technology. Once you start moving at speed, you get a series of complications with Doppler and some other reflections and things like that. Algorithms were developed to manage that, and they were actually developed out of a research crew at UniSA. They then spun off into a software company called Codar. And Codar are based in Melbourne Street. I think they've got 40 staff now. I think they're growing to 70 with staff overseas. 70% of all cars in the world that will use Wi-Fi to talk to each other have licensed the South Australian software for them. So you've got world leaders, just outside the CBD. So there is an opportunity for South Australian business to commercialise on that, because and now I know Sage and people like that are starting to partner now. They understand that technology, and they're integrators. There's this whole sort of multiplying effect starting to happen. The Western Australian Motrin Club just purchased this year. It's a Navia. It's a French-built autonomous shuttle. It takes 14 people, 11 standing and the rest sitting. This operates in a 15 to 40 kilometre an hour range, and they've got it operating now up in the Swan River. We're on the Swan River precinct there. We're in discussions with Flinders about whether we get one of these for the Bedford Park and start doing some trials there with them. They're about currently they're 200, just over 200 euros each, plus a very expensive servicing contract. But if we get a critical mass of sales, there's a chance that Navia will set up their head office in South Australia for Asian distribution. So there are some opportunities of being first movers, even if you're receiving other products, of at least implementing them here. Recently, there's a group of us went over to the US. We visited Tesla and Google and a whole series of software companies. One of the most interesting ones that might be of use to the mining industry is a company called Peloton. Peloton are building cloud-based truck platooning software. There'll be some equipment on the vehicles that the system needs to access, and there's a certain level of retrofitting. Volvo and Kenworth, who are shareholders in Peloton, will eventually obviously build these systems into their cars. So what it does is it allows the vehicles to travel at half the following distance that a normal driver would feel comfortable doing. So it allows us to bring it right up close, so you get the advantages of less drag. Their figures for the drag on the following trucks is about a 10% reduction in fuel costs. And even the lead vehicle gets around a 3% fuel saving because of the reduction of turbulence and drag at the back. And that's without optimisation, as they have fleets that know what's going to be sitting behind them, they'll even optimise more than that. But for Australia, why this is important is this technology, okay, you look at it on 3 and 4 lane highways, but most of ours are not this single carriageway. This technology has sensing technology that when it senses a car coming from behind to the peloton, it'll automatically space the trucks 200 metres apart so that the cars can leapfrog and go past them. As soon as they're gone, the technology will suck the trucks back up again. So these for transport, is really going to revolutionise it. Now, one of the reasons they're interested in coming to the Australian market pretty quickly, this will probably be commercialised this time next year. It was wanting to come here very early after that is because the business models work on the less time the vehicle's actually in traffic, the more time you get to use the advantage of the highway running, and Australia has very small percentages of time the trucks are in cities because of our size. We've got a largely American-based truck technology fleet. The high price of our fuel and actually the commonality of our street and highway signs around Australia. We talk about the problem of the Federation of 7 states, but as one of the Department of Transport administrators in the US said to us, you know, you imagine dealing with 52 states. There's still one state apparently that allows blue stop signs. So he said it's just very hard to do. We're also looking at, there's a RDM, have just finished a trial in Milton Keynes of these smaller pods. They're the sorts that we might look at it for some of the retirement village projects. We've had some discussion with ACH, a large aging care facilitator, and see how we might want to integrate some of those. So currently the under ARB, it's a group owned by all the road transport authorities. They've spun off what's called the Australian Driverless Vehicle Initiative. I think we're up to 65 partners now, but so you can see they're from all over the place, from Telstra to cargo companies to insurance companies to academia and Motrin Club. So there's quite an active group now working on this. And the World ITS Conference is in Melbourne in a fortnight with 4,500 people coming to it. So it's going to be quite a bit of a quite a coup for Australia to have got that here. That's about it.